Silent Town, Episode 1. The echoing steps. The street was empty. Too empty. Ethan's footsteps echoed through the cracked pavement as he walked. The sound unnaturally loud in the eerie stillness. The town felt like a frozen photograph storefronts. Stood untouched, their windows coated in thick layers of dust. Inside, mannequins posed in eerie silence, their blank faces turned toward the street. Rows of cars lined the roads, yet not a single engine hummed, not a single door open. The silence was suffocating, and then the footsteps came. Not his. A second set. Ethan stopped mid-step. So did they die? His pulse spiked. Slowly, he turned around. Nothing. Just the stretch of an abandoned road behind him. His skin prickled. The town had been like this since he woke up, silent, unmoving, wrong. He didn't remember how he got here. Couldn't recall his last memory before waking up in the middle of this desolate place. He tried calling out, but his own voice felt muted, swallowed by the heavy air. He had never heard silence like this before. It was thick, oppressive, unnatural. That movement, a flicker of shadow between the buildings. Ethan's breath hitched. His fingers tightened into a fist. Hello. His voice cracked. Silence. Then, from the alley ahead, a whisper slithered through the air. Hello. Ethan stiffened. The whisper hadn't echoed. It had responded. The sound was distorted, his own voice. Twisted. A wrong version of him speaking back. The realization sent a bolt of cold terror through his spine. He swallowed hard. Who's there? Nothing. He took a slow step forward. The air shifted. The town still looked the same, abandoned shops, lifeless buildings, but something felt off. He could feel it now. The presence. Something unseen. Something watching. A creaking noise made his breath hitch. A door. One of the shop doors. Slightly ajar now, even though it had been closed seconds ago. The wooden sign above it read Miller's Antiques in faded gold lettering. Ethan hesitated. Then, against every instinct, he reached for the handle. The metal was ice cold. He pushed the door open, and the hinges groaned, the sound almost deafening in the oppressive quiet. Inside, dust danced in the dim light filtering through tattered curtains. The shelves were cluttered with ancient-looking objects, porcelain, dolls, rusted pocket watches, framed photographs of people whose faces had been scratched out. A single grandfather clock stood at the back of the shop. Its hands weren't moving, but the pendulum swung, back and forth, back and forth. A soundless rhythm in the silence. Ethan stepped deeper inside, his heartbeat loud in his ears. Then thud. Something fell behind him. He spun around. A book lay, open on the floor, its pages yellowed with age, but the writing fresh. A single sentence, scrawled across the page in jagged ink. Turn around. Ethan's breath hitched. Every muscle in his body screamed at him to run, but he couldn't. Something held him there, locked in place. Slowly, he turned his head and froze. A figure stood in the shop now, barely 3 feet away. It was him. Ethan's reflection, but wrong. The same clothes, the same face, but its eyes empty, black voids. No whites, no pupils, just darkness. Then it smiled, his own smile, and in the blink of an eye it was right in front of him. The world snapped to black. To be continued. Before we dive into episode 2 of Silent Town, let me ask you something. What do you think is really going on in this town? Drop your theories in the comments. And don't forget to watch until the end. You might catch a hidden clue. Now, let's begin. Silent Town Episode 2. The Missing Hour. Ethan stood in the middle of the dimly lit motel room, staring at the old analog clock on the nightstand. It read 3:07 a.m. His head ached, and his fingers trembled as he reached for his notebook. He had been taking notes ever since he arrived in Silent Town, but something felt off. Flipping through the pages, his own handwriting stared back at him, filled with scattered observations and eerie details. Then he noticed it between 2 entries. There was an arm missing. His last recorded thought was at 2:15 a.m. and the next at 3:20 a.m., but he had no recollection of what happened in between. A sudden knock at the door made him jump. Slowly, he approached and peeked through the peephole. Nothing. The hallway was empty. He opened the door cautiously and stepped outside. The air was thick, heavy, almost unnatural. Then, at the far end of the corridor, a flickering light revealed something or someone standing perfectly still. A woman. She was dressed in a hospital gown, her skin pale, almost translucent. Her eyes were wide, unblinking. She pointed at him, her mouth moving, but no sound came out. Ethan felt a sharp pain in his head. A memory surfaced, brief, fragmented. He had seen her before, but where? Then she whispered, though her lips barely moved, "You don't belong here." The corridor lights went out. Ethan woke up gasping, still sitting at the motel desk. His notebook lay open, the clock now reading 3:08 a.m. Had he just lost another hour? His pen was in his hand, and there, written in his own handwriting, was a new entry. She came again. Don't trust the mirrors. His heart pounded. He didn't remember writing that dot. He turned toward the bathroom. The mirror above the sink reflected the room behind him. But something was wrong. His reflection wasn't moving in sync. Ethan's breath caught in his throat as his mirrored self tilted its head slightly and smiled. A knock at the door, louder this time. Ethan spun around. The door handle twisted. Someone or something was trying to get in. He stepped back, gripping a lamp from the nightstand. The knocking turned into pounding. The entire door frame shook. Then, suddenly, silence. Ethan barely had time to exhale before the bathroom light flickered violently. The mirror trembled. His reflection now stood directly against the glass, pressing its palms against it. "Let me out." The voice wasn't coming from the other side. It was inside his head. Then, behind him, the closet door creaked open. A whisper drifted from the darkness. "You left something behind." Ethan turned slowly. The air around him grew freezing. He squinted into the closet's shadows and saw a hand reaching out. His breath hitched. The hand, pale and fragile looking, twitched before gripping the doorframe. A shadowed figure began to emerge, its shape humanoid but wrong. Its head tilted unnaturally to the side, and its fingers were far too long. A familiar scent filled the air, sterile, like a hospital room. Ethan's body froze. The woman, the same woman from the hallway. "You need to remember," she whispered, stepping closer. Her feet didn't touch the ground. His head pulsed with pain. More memories tried to surface, like static breaking through a radio signal. Then he saw a glimpse of himself in a hospital bed, wires attached to his body, a monitor beeping faintly in the background. He wasn't supposed to be here. A sudden force yanked him backward. Ethan crashed against the nightstand, the lamp shattering on impact. The mirror cracked violently, and for a split second, his reflection changed a hospital bed, a coma patient. Himself. He wasn't awake. Ethan gasped as the door to the motel room flung open, revealing complete darkness beyond. The air seemed to hum with an unseen force, pulling him toward it. He scrambled back, but the pressure grew stronger. The woman watched, expression unreadable. "You have to wake up before they find you." Then, silence. Welcome to Silent Town. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Storyational for more thrilling episodes. Stay tuned because the secrets of Silent Town are only just beginning to unfold. A whisper crawled into his ears, a voice that seemed to come from inside his own mind. Ethan shut his eyes tightly, then reopened them, hoping this was just a nightmare. But when he looked again, what he saw made his entire body shiver. Right in front of him, less than a meter away, was a face. A face that looked exactly like his own but with terrifying differences. Its skin was pale, almost translucent. Its eyes were completely black, with no whites, and its mouth was unnaturally wide open, as if its jaw had been dislocated. "You belong to us." The face spoke with a voice that seemed to rise from the depths of the earth. Ethan let out an instinctive scream and stumbled backward. But before he could hit the ground, cold, bony hands emerged from the darkness and grabbed him. Hands that seemed endless, reaching for him from all directions. "We've been waiting for you all these years," another voice whispered from behind. Ethan struggled to break free, but the hands tightened their grip. Now, he could see more faces in the darkness. Faces that all looked like him, but each was distorted in strange, unnatural ways. Suddenly, a faint light appeared in the distance. Ethan focused on it, hoping it was a way out. But as the light got closer, he realized it was from his flashlight. Still lying on the floor. With all his strength, he lunged toward it. The hand still clung to him, but he managed to crawl forward. His fingers reached the flashlight, and he grabbed it. As soon as the light beamed through the room, the darkness retreated slightly. The faces vanished, but what remained was even more horrifying. The walls of the house were now covered with photos of him. Photos from different points in his life, yet he didn't remember any of them. In each picture, he stood with unknown people, but their faces were blurred beyond recognition beneath every photo. Dates were written 1998, 2005, 2012, 2020. Ethan felt his mind unraveling. How could he have been in this town all these years and remember nothing? Then, the whispers began again. This time, they came from everywhere, as if the walls, the ground, and even the air were speaking. You escaped, but now you've returned. We will make you whole. You can never leave. Ethan screamed and ran toward the door. Just as his hand touched the handle, something grabbed him from behind. You belong to us. A voice whispered into his ear. Ethan yanked the door open and threw himself outside. The cold night air hit his face, but he couldn't stop running. His legs moved on their own, carrying him toward the empty road. But when he reached the end of the street, he saw something that shattered his last bit of hope. Silent Town had no way out, and in the distance, the laughter began again.
Now, what do you think? Is Ethan really in 2025? Or has the town trapped him in another time? Leave your thoughts below and subscribe, because in the next episode, the truth behind Silent Town will finally be revealed.